Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are going to discuss The Rise of Skywalker. As that movie voice guy, The Rise of Skywalker. He always does that little breath at the end of the words. Oh, I hate it. But he does have a better voice than I do, so I can't complain too much. Anyway, let's talk about this movie. I am going to preface this by saying that I'm going to get into spoilers at some point. However, I'm going to try to keep the beginning part just kind of my general opinions on this, and then I'll move into spoilers, and I will give ample warning so that you can leave if you don't want spoilers. And I actually really recommend leaving before the spoilers if you don't want the movie spoiled, because there's stuff in this film that I don't know, I compare to other movies that are like Fight Club or something, where you have the first time you see it, it makes you feel a certain way, and then the second time you see it and you know that certain things are going to play out, even though you know they're going to play out, you still have in your head what it felt like the first time you saw it. And if you have a spoiler for that moment, it's going to seriously detract from that moment happening in the film. And I feel like that emotional roller coaster is going to lose one of its loop-de-loops if you take out this thing or you know a part. So I'm going to really say that, like, if you're considering seeing this film, don't listen to my spoilers at all. If you don't care, maybe still don't listen to them, because maybe you don't care but you'll go see it and then you're like, wow, that was kind of awesome. But if it was spoiled, you'll miss part of the roller coaster ride, you know, and that's a little sad. So where to start here? I did this video already, recorded it, and I was like half an hour in, and I was barely getting into it. So I was like, okay, I gotta tighten this up. So I brought in a little dry erase board, made some notes, to try to keep it together. I'm not gonna play out the whole movie, but I will talk about some of the scenes when I get to the spoilers, and we'll go from there. So let's see, my first impressions. On first viewing, having seen it, and you know, all the spectacle and everything, I actually liked it. I think that they did a really good job considering what the last movie was. I think the movie overall was decent, especially with what he had to work with. I think that's like a big caveat here, because there's parts that I was like, but how do you get around that? Because what was established in the last film either has to be addressed or has to be, you know, worked in somehow. And so I feel like he did a really good job of doing that without screwing it up. Like, you know, you're taking like a broken car and you're like, it's got to go do a race tomorrow, and you got to like put it together as best as you can. I feel like he did a good job in that. And then I typically like overall the rest of the story. I thought it was actually pretty fun and good. And still addressing the things that were set up in the previous movie that I think most of us kind of had a lot of issues with. And even the last film, as a spectacle, again, at the beginning, it looked cool, but there's like a lot of neat stuff to see, but there's a lot of issues with the film that, you know, translated over into the third movie. What do? Rian Johnson was like, I don't know, set it up kind of badly for JJ. But that said, I did enjoy this, and I really like The Force Awakens. I like JJ's directing style. I like the style of editing that they do with his films. That includes Star Trek and other stuff that he's done outside of the Star Wars universe. And this movie had that feel again. That had that, like, J.J. Abrams, like, I like the camera work, I like the edits, I like the transitions. It felt good in that way. Like, it was enjoyable to watch. So even the parts that I was not fond of played well. So I'll give it credit where credit's due there. Let's see. During the build-up to this film, I did not hide from spoilers. I didn't go search them out, but if something came up, I didn't go, I don't want to hear it. I just let it play. I was like, we'll see what happens. I heard a ton of spoilers, tons of them over the last few months. And I would say about 60% of what I heard was actually in the film. And a whole bunch of it wasn't. Whether that was in there at one point and then it was edited out or reshot, or whether it was just not really in there at all, I don't know. But the bit that was in there, most of it was executed really well. So when you hear someone talk about a spoiler online and they say, "Oh, this is, this is dumb for whatever reason," you hear it completely out of context of the whole scene. You don't have the emotions. You don't have like the, the emotional impact of the scene in general can change the whole dynamic of what is happening. So a thing that sounds maybe dumb on paper, written out, is actually really good when you see it all together. So it's, I would say most of the spoilers that I heard were kind of like that. I was like, oh, that wasn't nearly as dumb as I was thinking, or not dumb at all. This is actually kind of awesome. So that was a pleasant surprise, because I went in there with my expectations. I'm like, I am not going to expect anything, because I don't want to just be upset. I'm just going to go in there, and if it's good, then cool, and if it's not, I didn't lose out on anything. I didn't invest any of my emotions into this, but I left feeling good, so that was good. Overall, again, I really liked the editing and pacing. I thought worked well. There were, in the course of a 2+ hour movie, there were about 5 or 6 transitions that I found to be a little bit jarring, where I was like, whoa, like we just changed to scene really quick, and it was kind of like, what just happened? And I don't know if I was confused about things, because when I watch a film like Star Wars in particular, I'm looking all over the screen, all the little details, and looking for Easter eggs all over the place, and I sometimes am not paying attention to what I probably should be looking at. So some of those transitions may have felt jarring because I was not paying attention to the right thing in the scene, and that's not even the director's fault. That's just me, the way I look at films. So it could be that, I don't know. I honestly felt the same way with The Force Awakens the very first time I saw it, but the second time I saw it, all those jarring transitions, I didn't even notice them anymore. It was fine. And I kind of think that a person editing a film and looking at it over and over and over and over knows what's going to happen next. So when they're cutting these scenes together really tightly, like, they know how it's going to play out. They're not thinking about it from an audience who's just seen it for the very first time, kind of that feeling. And again, with The Force Awakens, I kind of had some of those moments where it was so quick, but on the second viewing, it was fine. So I'm going to see this movie again tomorrow night, and I'll if I feel differently, or I'm blaming myself for this one. It was jarring, but I think it was because of the way I'm looking at it. Not that I'm watching movies wrong or anything like that. It's just I'm literally distracted by all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, that was not really a complaint. It was like a thing, like I left feeling like there's a couple moments where I kind of didn't realize what happened, and we get to another scene and like a person's missing from the scene, and I'm like, where did that person go? And I probably just was literally not paying attention when it happened. So that, and then again, I'm trying to not do spoilers, so I'm being not talking about very much here. There were some parts that were surprisingly gruesome for a Star Wars movie. And not like, as an adult, I'm not like, oh my god, it's so bad, I can't see it. But I was like pretty impressed. I'm not even gonna say it in a bad way. I was like, whoa, that was like a pretty extreme thing that just happened to these people in this film, or person, or if I was a kid, I'd be like traumatized, but probably in a good way. And if you're a parent watching this, don't not take your kid to see this movie. I think it's actually probably good for kids to see some stuff that's sort of like over the top. Helicopter. I say this like this is a compliment to the film. Like, I was like, whoa, this is a moment that I was not expecting to see in a Star Wars movie. So yeah, that stuff's in there. I'm actually surprised that it got through with Disney and everything. Was like, yeah, it's cool, but I think good job, good on them for that. Now, I think I'm going to get into talking about some things that are spoilers. This review is not going to be insanely long. I'm not going to do this, the whole movie. I'm going to go into some scenes that I liked and talk about them. So, if you're not want to see spoilers, I'm going to give you 15 more seconds to get out of here. This section is going to be spoilers. There's not going to be an edit. This is spoilers. And when this movie hits the 10-minute mark, this film, it's going to be spoilers galore. So we've got 4, 3, 2, 1, Okay, now 10 minutes in, we are at the spoiler mark. So, I'm going to talk about some things that they didn't not necessarily bothered me. I don't have an opinion on them one way or the other yet. My brain is kind of conflicted on some of the elements where the old curmudgeon side of myself that grew up with the original trilogy looks at some of the new stuff and it feels ridiculous. However, it's not necessarily wrong either. So, in the sense of a movie, it could be actually pretty entertaining and fun to watch. And my brain is very conflicted on that. It's like, well, do I like this or not? I was entertained. I dug some of the parts, but it's not my Star Wars, but it probably is fine. So let's see where to start out. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about, it's going to seem like I'm complaining, but in the scope of a whole movie, these are not a lot of pieces. It's a small chunk of things in the film. I think that J.J. Abrams really tried to establish a little bit of flaw in Rey toward the beginning. Like, there's some training scenes where she's still a total ridiculous badass, where by this movie she should kind of be there, which I think on this movie this is okay. I think Rian Johnson missed a huge opportunity to show Rey learning some new things and having some failures and building herself up, which is such a shame. Honestly. So at the beginning of this movie, JJ has some of her training and she's doing a great job, but then she has some misses and some things don't quite go her way. And I feel like that's a really good thing to show. And I think it was good of JJ to kind of like put that in there, to show like she's not quite perfect. I know everybody's making her out to be perfect. The whole last movie should have been this kind of stuff with Rey. You know, should have been like how Luke Skywalker in Empire Strikes Back, how he got, he's learning a bunch of new stuff and he's getting more powerful, but he got his ass handed to him by Vader at the end, and Rey didn't have to go through any of that. So this film, it feels like she's trying, like JJ's trying to like show that she's still learning, and it's hard to show that someone's learning when you've seen them do so much awesome stuff already. And she's very powerful in this film. So he tries to establish a little bit of that, and I think it was a good effort. I appreciate that it was in there. Actually, I'm like glad that he put it in there. I wish it could have been more. It's not his fault that it wasn't more, if that makes sense. These are the scenes I was talking about where stuff will happen. I'm like, it had to be addressed in some way. So I'm glad he put it in there. Again, my complaint is that it wasn't in the previous film like this. Where do we go from there? So yeah, Rey, you see her kind of struggle, fumble. She gets it together. She's still really powerful. And then the same thing where with the Jedis in general in the new films is they're way too powerful, in my opinion, compared to the original films that I grew up with. And that's me being an old man. I'm looking at these things going, that's not what I grew up with. It can't be it. But even when the prequels came out, the Jedi could do all this acrobatic, crazy stuff that they couldn't do in the films that I grew up with. So, it's kind of a same kind of transition where, in the prequels, they show them doing flips and like jumping from crazy heights and doing all this stuff. In this movie, it's just like one-upping that a little bit. There were elements that JJ used that were established by Rian Johnson with force powers, where like the transitions when in the previous movie when Kylo and Rey were having their like force communication, which I actually enjoyed those scenes a lot in the last film. Those are like some of the parts I like the most out of the last film. But there's shots when they touch hands and Kylo's hand gets like rain on it or something, it's like he brings some of the environment where she's at to him, and that happens in this film a few times, and I don't know if I like it or not. I don't dislike it, but again, the curmudgeon side of myself is like, I don't know about this. So it's hard. I'm trying to be open-minded about it because it's not necessarily wrong. They haven't really established anywhere that can't be done, but it's almost becoming like Doctor Strange level powers where they can do these things, and I'm like, I don't know. It. I don't know. It's a very hard thing to talk about because I don't know if I'm trying to like control my own bias when I think about this stuff. Um, Again, this was established by Rian Johnson. J.J. Abrams ran with some stuff that he established. I have a feeling that none of that would exist if Rian Johnson hadn't put it in. So J.J. used it to his advantage. I actually think it played well in the movie here. The way the scenes worked out, I think was kind of good. They reestablished Knights of Ren. They're back in this film, which is great because I thought that was like going to be a cool thing. They were underdeveloped still. Again, there was a total second film that could have addressed this and didn't. So they're back in this one. I still don't know much about them. I wish I knew more. They look super cool. They're clearly like powerful dudes. They're hanging out with Kylo Ren. They did tend to show up at every scene, kind of like what's her name, Lois Lane in Superman, where in the Man of Steel and all this, every time Superman is anywhere, Lois Lane comes running up. It's like, hey, Superman, and I was like, how do the Knights of Ren keep finding everybody so quick? That was a thing that was a little to me. It was a little too convenient. Not horrible, but and it moves the story forward. Stuff's happening. It kind of gives you a sense of suspense and what's going on. But it was just maybe a little too convenient story-wise. The stuff with Emperor Palpatine. I think all of us know now that Emperor Palpatine is going to be in this. They established it right away. So you don't get to the end and it's like a surprise. It is established in the opening crawl. It's like Emperor Palpatine. Like basically, he's there. They know he's there. Kylo Ren is like right at the beginning of the film is going to confront Emperor Palpatine. And I think he wants to take out Emperor Palpatine so that he can be the most powerful one, but then Palpatine kind of makes a deal with him to go get the girl. And so Kylo basically leaves to go do that. And that's sort of why Rey is being pursued by Kylo Ren for the whole film. And I don't mind that. I thought that was fine. Some people, there's mixed feelings on Palpatine. I had mixed feelings going into it on like how I felt about him being back. But I feel like the way that they brought him back, it doesn't feel offensive to me like I thought it might. Like I thought, oh God, he got killed. But they addressed that he got killed. He's like a morbid, gross corpse on a device that moves his body around, and they show close-ups of his hands. His fingers are missing, and like bones are sticking out and stuff. It's pretty gnarly, and his just eyes just blind and gross, and so he's not like the awesome Emperor Palpatine. It looks like somebody fished his body out of the wreckage, and then he's like not in good shape, but like forced. Yeah, it's like force controlling this like dead guy. It's like zombie Palpatine, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I actually kind of liked it. So, this is my opinion. People aren't going to agree with me. That's okay. I actually was like okay with this. And because Snoke got taken out in the last film by Rian Johnson, they had to address that. So they basically say, and I think it might be in one of the new trailers. He's like, I'm every voice you've heard. And it's like talking to Kylo Ren, like putting his thoughts in Kylo Ren's head forever about, Snoke and Darth Vader and all these voices that Kylo's heard are basically coming from the Emperor. That's fine. He had to do something. Snoke got killed because Rian Johnson killed him, so now you got to do something different. So he's working with what Rian Johnson gave him, and I feel like that was a good out. It works. It works. So yeah, that happens. At the same time, basically, the Resistance fighters, they meet a spy. They're finding out similar information, and they're going to have to go take care of some business. They go to this planet. They end up meeting up with Lando, which is fine. Seems not too crazy. It's a little quick paced, like I was saying before, where the pacing's so fast that I feel like it's just happening. Again, I might see it again tomorrow and might not feel like that. They're walking around in this desert, and they come across like this tribe of aliens, and Lando's just hanging out with them. And the random aside with C-3PO, when they're walking in the desert, C-3PO's knees are different, and I don't know if it's a costume that they modded for walking on the sand, or if they did digital legs and then they had to do something weird to make them work right. I don't know yet. So I caught it briefly. I'm going to be staring at it tomorrow when I get in there, the theater, to look. So they come across Lando. Lando kind of gets him out of a bind, but then they're trying to escape this planet because they're able to continue to find them, I guess, because Kylo Ren and Rey kind of have this connection, and there's a point where that whole force thing, being able to like bring things from one environment to another, happens. Kylo Ren basically, they have like a force connection in this moment in the desert, and when they break apart, Kylo Ren grabs Rey's necklace and he has it with him on his ship. And this is one of those things I feel like this is, personally, I feel like it's a little too extreme, but again, established by Rian Johnson that this could happen. And if we're going to run with what we have to run with, it kind of works in the scene. They basically analyze it, figure out where it's from, and then they're able to find them on their planet. And there's already like a First Order presence on this planet, so they're trying to escape. The First Order chases them. That's when you get the scenes with like those flying stormtroopers, which I personally don't like the design of those motorcycles that like flip up and then launch them. It just seems unnecessary, or there's another way to do it where the driver doesn't have to be also tilted forward in a bizarre way that seems inefficient. Even if there's the back of the thing went and then will launch the guy, that would be acceptable. But when the driver has to get launched forward too, like lurched up, it just, the physics seem all bad. I'm like, I don't like that. I don't mind the flying stormtroopers. Flying stormtroopers are fine. The little carts they're riding on are fine. It's just that transitional thing bothered me. And it bothered me in the trailer too, so it is what it is. And those scenes were kind of like a cross between speeder bikes and pod racers, the way it was shot. Actually, it was shot really, really nicely. They go through all these canyons and they're getting chased. It's actually pretty well done. So I dug watching that. It was exciting, fun to look at. The stormtroopers' guns are maybe a little too like anime side. They're just giant and they're shooting these giant explosive things, and I feel like that makes them too powerful, even though they're not really like hitting their targets. It's kind of like, just have them shoot lasers, they'll be fine. But that's sort of like a mild complaint. I don't think that's a big deal. It's just, for me, I was like, just give them regular guns. That's all they need. They don't need these like, stupid launchers and stuff. Anyway, again, me just complaining, me being a curmudgeon old guy, like that's not what I grew up with. But yeah, so they leave Lando, and it's somewhere in there. They just leave Lando, and I think I was not paying attention to what happened, so I kind of was like, where did Lando go? It's probably fine. Again, I'm taking responsibility for this lapse and what happened in the movie. So yeah, they escape there. They're getting chased all over the place. They meet up with Kerry Russell's character, who's played what's her name? Felicity or whatever. She's a bounty hunter looking guy, pretty cool helmet, neat costume. Her character was like, being that she was in the film, I thought her character was gonna have a lot more to do with stuff, and that's where they have to excuse me, on the desert planet they find this ship and this weird blade, and they have to translate it, but 3PO can read it, but he physically can't say what it says. It's like a forbidden language, and his programming just physically won't allow it. So they're going to go try to get this thing translated somewhere where they can find out what it says, because it's going to have the directions to where they need to go to get the thing, so they can find Palpatine. It's like an adventure. I actually liked all this adventure part. I thought it was fine. It wasn't like the Canto Bight stuff where they go to this casino. Like, this whole thing kind of played really well, in my opinion. And they're getting ready to leave. It's like Chewbacca, Poe, Finn, Rey, which I thought was a fun combination to have them all together. I liked their dynamic. I thought it was good. And the First Order finds them, and they find this old junky ship, and they're gonna take off with it. And Chewbacca, this is a big old spoiler, gets kidnapped. The First Order, the Knights of Ren, captured Chewbacca, And Rey goes out of the ship and sees them putting Chewbacca in this ship, and the ship takes off. And Rey force stops the ship, like she pauses it, and she's trying to bring it back down. But I just missed a part. I'm like screwing this up. That was right at the same scene when Kylo Ren is coming. So Rey is out of the ship while Finn and Poe and Chewie are in the ship. They're trying to get this thing going. Chewbacca runs out to get Rey. She just had a run in with Kylo Ren in his TIE fighter, which is what you see in the trailer. The first trailer where she jumps out of the TIE fighter, cuts the wing off, and it crashes really hard. And so as that's happening, she sees Chewbacca getting put into the ship, and then this ship goes to take off, and she's like, force stops the ship, and she's trying to pull it back down to save Chewbacca. But now Kylo Ren, he's walking out from unscathed. Another weird, like, hey, he didn't even get hurt. You'd think, like, he might have got hurt in that accident. But he comes out walking along through the desert. Rey is holding the ship in place. And then Kylo is trying to, like, let the ship go. He's, like, trying to overpower Rey to get the ship out. Chewbacca's in the ship, and the ship's getting all tilted. And they're fighting over it. And just a big old spoiler. I'm actually not even going to tell the whole spoiler. I'm going to tell part of it. Rey is struggling so hard, and all of a sudden, Force lightning comes out of Rey's hands. Like Emperor Palpatine Force lightning comes out of Rey's hands, and she blows up the ship accidentally with Chewbacca in it. Kills Chewbacca. Done. And I was like, holy... that was a moment for me. Like, the whole audience, like, ugh. And her reaction is really good. Like, acting wise, I thought it was like felt accurate. And, you know, they have to go. They have to run out of there. Chewie's just been killed. It's really emotional moment. So that was a thing. And it leads into some more spoiler stuff. I'm not even going to address it in this video because I don't think I should yet. I think you should watch it play out. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, that was a moment in the film where I was like, wow, oh my god, what just happened? So you see now, like, Rey has some definitely, like, dark side powers in her that are pretty scary. And I think if you've paid attention to any of the spoilers, you probably heard that Rey is a Palpatine. And, you know, her parents were, like, junk traders or whatever. But they address it in a really good way because they make it, yeah, her parents were junk traders and they weren't special, but they were also related to Palpatine, but they just chose not to follow his path, so they were, like, simple people. But because they knew that they were being pursued and that the Emperor was after Rey, they gave Rey away to whatever his name is from Force Awakens. I don't know, the big guy with the weird face, Simon Pegg's character. So I thought that was a good way to handle that. I really did. I thought that was actually a really good way to handle that. So, you know, people were like, "Oh, she's a Palpatine," and complaining about it. I'm like, it actually works fine. In the scheme of Star Wars, where, like, everybody's, like, interrelated in these special ways, it's totally fine. Didn't bother me at all. Thought it was a good choice to make. Let's see. But anyway, so they got to go find Palpatine. I'm leaving out big chunks of the movie, by the way, so there's still stuff to see here. They go to find Palpatine. They find a planet with the Death Star debris on it, and the knife dagger thing that they have, which now they've recovered. There's a whole part of the story. They recover that thing, which is, I actually enjoy that whole scenario too. So the stuff I'm talking about are things that are either really impactful or I kind of had a problem with. But remember, there's 2+ hours of movie that are pretty entertaining and generally good outside of what I might complain about here. So keep that in mind because it sounds like I might be griping. But this scene, they have this dagger, and there's one of those moments where it's just a little too convenient that somebody knows how to do this. But the dagger has, like, designs in the blade, and there's this piece that slides out. And it actually lines up with the Death Star debris out on the horizon. Like, it is a total callback to Goonies when they have the little coin and it lines up with the restaurant on the beach. It's just like that. You line it up with the Death Star, and you, like, line up the pieces, and then the little thing that comes down, lines up with exactly where the what is it called? The thing it basically shows where Palpatine is. There's like a device that shows where he is, and it shows where it is, and it's in the Death Star wreckage. If you remember Return of the Jedi, there's this big spire that has the little building at the top. That's where the throne room is for Palpatine, which I didn't know. I've talked to somebody about this recently, and when I saw Return of the Jedi as a kid, I had no idea when they show that surface flyover of the Death Star that little spire that's in the shot was actually Palpatine's like throne room. I didn't know that until years and years later. But you can see that thing is just like up there, perched out on the Death Star, and she's got to go get to it. But the waves are just giant waves, and they're going to wait for the storm to calm down and go out the next day. But Rey just is like ignores everybody. She's in too much of a hurry, and she goes out to the ship. I didn't mind that scene. I thought it was fine. The ship she takes out it reminds me of those ships that they used in the end of The Last Jedi on Crate, the salt planet, where those ships that are all janky and they gotta like drag that thing on the ground. It was similar to that, where it's just this junky old thing, and it didn't bother me. I just wondered, like, isn't there some other ships around that they could just fly over there? But so she has to go cope with the waves. She makes it out. She's inside the old Death Star parts, and it's clearly like 90% destroyed. There's stuff everywhere, but there's like kind of cool stuff in there. Like you see like a bunch of old stormtrooper costumes just all like in the water laying around and stuff. I dug that kind of thing. It's fan service, of course, but I loved it. I'm a fan. I like that kind of stuff. Worked for me. So she goes and gets her part, and then she gets a little thing that tells the way, and then Kylo Ren shows up, and that's when they have their fight out by the water. I thought that fight was fine. Finn and this new girl that they meet on this planet go out there to try to stop her and save her, and they can't. She's fighting. She's fighting with Kylo Ren, and Kylo Ren actually is like kind of besting her for the most part. Like he's doing really well, and he has a moment where he decides that he's gonna stop fighting her, and it's because Leia is making a force link with Kylo. Now, I didn't get into any of this yet with Leia. I'll get into this in a second, but so Kylo decides to stop fighting Rey, and he lets go of his saber, and Rey gets a saber, and Kylo is like basically unarmed. Rey stabs him in the stomach, and let's see. I'm trying to think if I should address something first. So Leia is connected to Kylo, and when Rey does that, it basically kills. It doesn't kill her, but like Leia dies at that moment, and that was kind of a moment that was kind of crazy. But speaking of Leia, I can't believe I didn't bring this up sooner. Carrie Fisher's part in this, they did an absolutely phenomenal job of getting her into this film after she died. She was dead. They like pieced together all this footage and made her scenes happen, and it was I really forgot that they had done that because it was so well done that I forgot that they had to like hodge together all this old footage and make it work. And they didn't do a digital replacement on her face, but they did. I think they digitally put her face from existing scenes on another body for some shots. Couldn't tell. I couldn't tell at all. I completely forgot. I literally was watching the scenes and they play out really well. Everything that's happening in the scenes works really, really well. So that was super impressive. And it was like nice to have her in the film. So take it for what it's worth. I thought that was kind of awesome that she was in there, and they did a really good job with her. Really, really good job with Carrie Fisher. Thoroughly impressed with that. But they hit that part, and when Rey stabs Kylo, that's when Princess Leia finally dies. There's actually I'm gonna go back to the Carrie Fisher thing. There is a lot of Carrie Fisher in this movie, like a lot of stuff, like a surprising amount of stuff. I was shocked. I'm saying again, I am shocked how well they did it, because there's a lot of her in there. I thought they would have a few scenes, little things. It was like a pretty considerable amount of Carrie Fisher in this movie. So, back to the things. Rey stabs Kylo. Carrie Fisher dies at that moment. Rey feels it and like realizes what just happened. And they established this earlier. Rey can heal with the Force, so she heals Kylo Ren. This is another one of those elements where I'm like, you're pushing into some weird zones here. But we're going to go back to the prequels, which George made, and he is talking about how the Sith powers can be used to bring back the dead, and what do you say? They some consider to be unnatural, so she's able to heal stuff, which is a good power, but maybe it's because she's like Sith related. I don't know, but she's able to heal stuff. She heals Kylo, and then she takes off with Kylo's ship and basically leaves him on this Death Star, but he's healed and he's like alive. He wasn't dead before, but he had a giant hole through his body, and she like fixed him. I don't know how I feel about that yet. I don't hate it, but I also don't like it, so I'm kind of like trying to decide. When I see it again, maybe I'll come to a conclusion on that. So Rey takes off, and then they're off to find Palpatine. She takes off in his ship, which Kylo has another one of these like locator devices to find Palpatine in his ship. So, long story short, I'm going to bypass a bunch of stuff. She ends up being able to get to Palpatine. She goes back to the island where Luke was at, and I forgot about this part. Like when after the whole thing, Kylo throws his lightsaber in the ocean. He's done. He's kind of like, he feels like he's got to right thing, so he's throwing his lightsaber in the ocean. You see him just there, and then Rey goes to the island where Luke was at, and she's gonna move to that island forever. She burns Kylo's ship, and she goes to throw the lightsaber in the fire. Same kind of thing. Like her and Kylo kind of, they want to give up on this stuff. Goes to throw the lightsaber in the fire, and Luke Skywalker's ghost is there to catch that saber. I actually like the way they did Luke's ghost. It kind of looks more like the old school ghost. It's not like the Ghost Yoda that was really opaque and it looked like a puppet that just had a blue glow. This was like Luke Skywalker is sort of transparent. It looked a little like the old school ghosts. I dug that. So basically Luke's like stops her from throwing the saber in there. He makes a nod that I think is like a little bit of a jab at Rian Johnson, or he like says something that like is a little bit of a jab at Rian Johnson's choice with like throwing the lightsaber, which I'll leave that for you guys to see. Gives Rey the saber back, and then shows Rey there's another saber there that was Leia's saber, and then they cut back to scenes where Luke is training Leia, and it was like the only scene in the movie where there was like face replacement. And they're both training with like the blast shield. So you just see these two people fighting, and it's Luke and Leia, but they're younger. It's like, Jedi era, maybe even slightly too young looking Luke in that scene training Leia. And then they open the thing, you just see their faces for a moment. And it's done well. They don't try to talk or anything that would like distract you. You just see them. And then Luke is narrating the story basically to Rey, the current ghost Luke, and saying how Leia, wanted to pass this, like didn't want to do this thing. She saw her future and all this stuff and didn't want to continue, and her saber got put aside. So now Rey's got Leia's saber and Luke's saber. So she takes them both to go confront the Emperor. Trying to think if there are other scenes. If I'm not discussing it, it's because it played out in a way that I feel is like fine. Works well. Movie moves along, and I again entertained most of the time. I'm skipping lots and lots and lots of parts here. I'm not telling you the whole movie. I'm just telling you like parts that stuck in my head the most. So Rey realizes there's the device in Kylo's ship. She gets it. They revive Luke's X-wing off of this island. So now she's in the Red 5 X-wing. She's going to take Luke's old X-wing to go meet Palpatine, which I thought was a nice touch. She goes find Palpatine, does her stuff. There's some stuff that happens in between, obviously. And Palpatine confronts her. The whole thing plays out how it plays out. I don't think I need to get into spoilers. I can't spoil it it's a little much. But basically, Kylo Ren comes there to like help her. At this point, Kylo Ren's kind of turned to the good side. There is a moment this is a pretty big spoiler, but there's a moment before Kylo Ren leaves where Harrison Ford is there, Solo is there. It's not really a Force ghost. I think it's more happening in Kylo's head, but Harrison Ford's there almost as a Force ghost, but it's kind of established that it's not a ghost. It's just Kylo Ren, this is going on in his head. And he like kind of, Kylo is going to make the right choice, go save Rey. So they go to Palpatine's planet, and Rey's already having the confrontation with Palpatine, and it looks like there's like, there's not really ways out. She's going to if she kills him, she takes his place. If she doesn't kill him, all her friends are about to get killed because there's this million freaking Star Destroyers outside that Palpatine produced out of the earth somehow. That's a part that's a little underexplained. Like, there's all these ships, and I don't know if they were built way back when, or if they're being built now. I don't know. They just all come out of the ground. They're all crewed up with all these people. That's a little bit of a gray area. There's another gray area that's very, very much like the Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark scene where Marion gets put into a truck and they drive off, and Indy's trying to save her, and the truck flips and blows up, and then Marion's okay somehow. That happens. That same thing happened in this movie. You'll know what I'm talking about when it happens. I'm not going to spoil that part, but it's total nod to Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you're like, wait a minute, how did that work? So I'm going to watch it again today and see if I can figure out where I missed a thing, because it is one of those moments. Anyway, sorry, that was a little aside. Rey's confronting Palpatine, who is basically, they have this giant fleet of Star Destroyers. Each one of these Star Destroyers has a Death Star powered cannon on it. So there's like thousands of ships with these crazy cannons that can blow up a planet. So they could be everywhere and just blow up planets at will. You don't have one space station. So this tiny band of resistance pilots is trying to like fly around and like fight these ships, and they're clearly losing. It's like it was done in such a way that you feel severely outnumbered. Like it's super apparent. And I actually think they did a good job with making you feel completely hopeless for these people. Like it's like there's no way they're gonna pull this off. So Palpatine's there, basically like, look, if you don't kill me, your friends are gonna die. If you take over my place, you can stop all of this, and your friends can live. Like, he's given some pretty good reasons for her to try to take his place, and he wants to die. Like, him dying means that like his spirit goes into her. His heir is now going to be in charge. So it doesn't feel wrong. Like, I thought it was going to be like, Palpatine's back in this. I don't know, but I thought they did a pretty good job with this part. So Kylo, he shows up. He does not have his sabers. The Knights of Ren are there, again, conveniently, and they all turn on him, and they're all fighting him. He's using a force against them, but he's unarmed. But he has a mind link with Rey, and Rey has two sabers, and she's getting ready to cut down Palpatine, has a saber back, and they link up with Kylo, and when she unlinks, she doesn't have a saber. Now Kylo has now taken that saber, and now he can fight the Knights of Ren, which, now that they've established that can happen, was kind of a cool thing. So I was like, okay, that worked. And he's got his blue saber now, which is like the Luke saber, which is kind of awesome. And kills a bunch of the Knights of Ren, and he comes in, and they're both there with their little blue sabers facing off with the Emperor. And basically the Emperor just sucks the lifeblood out, like sucks their powers together, and he's like reformed. So all his like decrepit stuff is like reforming. He starts to look more like the Emperor we remember from the prequels, with the red eyes and super gnarly and really, really powerful. And he basically force lightnings like an insane amount of force lightning, and all these ships have now come to join the Resistance fighters to fight all these Star Destroyers, like tons and tons of ships. Like there's shots in the commercial where you just see like 1,000 ships. That's that scene. They all show up. They send out this call. Everybody's starting to show up to come fight. So there's tons and tons of ships. So it's kind of awesome. Looks cool. Very impressive. Very impressive to look at. And they address the fact that it's like what army is this? And they're like, no, these are just people. They're here to fight. It's not like an army. It's just like, oh, everybody's showing up from everywhere to like contribute. And I kind of like that. I dug it. Some people might complain about it. I actually enjoyed that part. And the thing that I didn't talk about either is that the way they crewed the ships for they call it the Last Order or whatever now, the Palpatine's military, are pretty awesome. They kind of remind me of like old school. The people in charge aren't like the Hux where he's all like goofy and stuff. They're serious. They feel like legitimate, like kind of like scary, powerful people. There's just like, you know, people that would I don't know, like the old school like Death Star generals and stuff. They had that feel, acting wise, and the look of them. They just look stern and like people you wouldn't want to cross. You know, I dug that. And then those red Sith troopers, and I didn't mind them in the film. I think that when I saw the costumes out, I was like, it's a little much. It's like First Order, but just overdone. But when you see them on camera, they like moving around and stuff. They seem fine. Didn't bother me. Anyway, so all those ships had shown up to fight along. Well, now Palpatine's super powerful, and he just force lightnings the hell out of everybody. And he's not blowing up the ships, but the lightning is like shutting down everybody's electronics. All the ships are starting to fall out of the sky, and I liked it. I personally liked it. I heard people talk about it and complain like, "Oh, I can't believe he does this," but they didn't see it. I feel like visually looking at it is really, really cool. And then, you know, it goes from there. I don't want to get... I've already spoiled enough of it. I'll leave the end open. I think the end was fine. It was fine. It wasn't... I wasn't like, yay! And I also wasn't bummed, you know? So I'm going to leave it at that. I'll let you guys watch the rest of it and see what happens. I don't think there's anything else to spoil. There is like... I mentioned way earlier that they go to retrieve some information that was from a spy. Well, this is a spoiler. The spy turns out to be Hux, and they don't have Hux in this movie very much, which I appreciate, because I didn't like Hux's character. Now all the people that are like in those positions are much more suited, I think, actors for that kind of role. So Hux turns out to be the spy. He's letting the Resistance people that he captured go, and they're like, "Why are you letting us go?" He's like, "I'm the spy. I don't care about this. I just don't want Kylo Ren to be in charge, basically." But then, like 2 scenes later, they realize that Hux is a spy, and one of the new admirals or whatever just kills him, and that's it. Hux is gone, just like that. He's only in the movie for a few minutes. They just get rid of him, which I think was a good choice. Personally, I was like, Hux is gone. Awesome. So yeah, that was a good choice. Happened earlier. Sorry for the late spoiler. But the end of the film, obviously, Rey's got to win. I don't think that the way she won was bad. Like a lot of people will talk about, oh, she beat the Emperor. Blah, it cheapens all this stuff, and Luke and Vader. I don't think it does, because the way that everything sort of played out, again, it's out of context. If you just think, oh, she's so awesome, she just beat the Emperor. Doesn't work like that. There's a lot of stuff that goes wrong, and the Emperor is super, super weakened at this point. Even though he's kind of got his strength back at that, you know, at the end, is still not like the full strength Emperor that you remember from the old films. He's kind of still like this gross old thing, and I feel like she doesn't win by like, you know, attacking him and then just suddenly beating him. She kind of like is deflecting his own energy back on him, so he's like kind of destroys himself in a way. So it's not quite like she won. She was able to like hold him off, and then he kind of destroyed himself. It's how I perceived it. Maybe I'm wrong. That's how I perceived it. So I don't think it was offensive to the old trilogy at all, which I was hoping it wouldn't be, because I'd heard what was going to happen, and I was like, but once I saw it, I was like, okay, that wasn't bad. But I wasn't, again, same thing. I wasn't stoked, but I wasn't let down either. So it's fine. I'll see it again in a few days. I might feel completely different after I see this tomorrow. So I guess we'll see how that goes. But I'm going to wrap this up because we're almost 50 minutes into me rambling. So if you've stuck around this long, congratulations. I'm assuming a bunch of people are just going to complain and then leave down below. Oh, you're freaking chill, whatever. Look, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it on my first viewing. I may have realizations over the next few days that make me either hate it or like it more. I don't know yet. This is just my first impressions with a bunch of spoilers. So hopefully it was somewhat entertaining or useful or filled you in some way. And if I have drastically different opinions after I see it again, I will let you know. But I'm just going to call it there. We'll leave it. Go watch the movie. I would say it's definitely worth seeing. Take it in. Don't go by off what everybody says. You should see it because the stuff that you may, even if you wait for it to come out on Disney Plus or whatever, it's the stuff that I heard about it just didn't play out how I heard it, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was worth seeing. I'm seeing it again myself. So anyway, guys, have fun. I'm gonna get back to my day, and I will see you kids soon. Later.